All right. Here we are. We're live. Not live to the kind of live.
Live enough.
Yeah, I'm pumped. So this is the welcome to Tech Packs Are Due. For you out there, this is going to be the first guest on the show talking about footwear and shoes and all that good stuff. And it's kind of funny because um, I think Caulin is probably one of the most well-known people in footwear circles and is not in footwear currently.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done some work in footwear. He's dabbled, but is not currently holding a professional job in the footwear world that you might think, like the standard, like with a brand. Um, so yeah, just to introduce, it's Colin Tanner, the man.
What's going on, guys?
He reached out to me last year ish, a year and a half
Yeah.
ago. Just
hmm
wanted to chat up a footwear designer, which I think is super cool, um, and which is why I want to bring him on today to kind of talk about negotiation or not negotiation. Sorry, whoa. Talking about networking and how important that is, especially in footwear, getting in the door and meeting people and getting in front of people and becoming a face and not just a name, which is kind of
Yeah.
huge. Um, it's how I got into footwear, kind of, sort of. Like I had to get in front of people, which is probably the scariest thing for a lot of designers. I feel like a good portion of us are introverted, like especially with the nature of design. Like it's like your heart is kind of like put on display, and you you just don't want to give it away to just anybody. So
Yeah.
it's tough. Anyway, so Colin is also the first subscriber and first watcher of a
Always.
he's a what is it, a first mover. um is
Oh,
that
what
what
is it?
people call it, like when they invest in stocks and stuff, they're first movers? So hopefully,
Yeah.
he might see big gains being on this podcast. But anyway, yeah,
Exactly.
Colin, I would love to hear what you have to say about the first two episodes, as choppy as they might be. But yeah, kind of, yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, of course. Well, hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be on Tech Packs Are Due. This, I got to see like the inklings of this brainchild, and then you got all the gear, then you like ramped it all up, and you recorded all these episodes. So, I'm stoked for you to build this for yourself, and also like this is needed, man. There's no content like this out right now, and so I'm stoked
Yeah,
that you're doing this. My impression of the first couple episodes, man, I was just telling you off air, I guess you could say,
yeah,
that I found it really interesting that you look at footwear design in a completely different way than I've thought about it, and I think that just stems from our different backgrounds. Like you said, I'm not currently in the professional world. I have freelance contracts that I'm working for as a footwear designer. Obviously, I went to Pencil,
mm,
such as yourself, and lots of industry leaders out there as well. Shout out to Dr. Dwayne Edwards. Shout out to PLC.
yeah. Shout out.
Um, exactly. But um, I think about footwear design from like a functional standpoint or like an innovation standpoint a lot of times, and I think that stems from like coming from a retail background. Like I worked at Vans for about 3 years in a retail capacity. I worked at Foot Locker for about 2.5 years in a retail capacity, and like for a lot of people, like knowing the technology and how the technology applies to them is important. And something that I like that you do is you have this way of understanding and knowing like the color material design and the
Right.
story and the technology and how the functions all fit together, which is like where I like to live. But then you have this way of stripping that away and just analyzing the aesthetic and understanding how the aesthetic can form these emotional connections we have with product. And, you said earlier, you were like, a lot of footwear designers are introverts or introverted, and it's hard because design is such an emotional aspect. You're being a conduit for other people's emotions and feelings and stories, but you're also kind of getting in there and being part of the story as well, right?
Right.
And so you put a lot of emotional energy and time into this product, and so seeing someone like yourself be able to strip it back and look at the emotions behind it is just wonderful. So yeah, I
Hmm.
love that. That's like how you see footwear design, which is different to me, like different and the same. But it just makes me feel like, that there's more to learn, there's more to be, and there's more perspectives to have. I think that's the beauty of design, is that it's all about multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
So
That's that's true. Like oh man, I think I've always been an aesthetics person. It's hard
yeah,
to like I have a hard time. Maybe it's just me believing that I can come up with anything like functionally interesting in footwear. So a lot of times I tend to like stay off of it, and I tend to try to imagine, at least like when I mean talking about the Kyrie, like I was trying to get into like I wonder like what part of Kyrie's life inspired these lines.
yeah,
Um, there's a lot of the embroideries and stuff, and a lot of that is like, I can only imagine sitting down with Kyrie for a minute. This is probably a person unlike anybody you've really ever met.
right,
Um, One, probably because he knew he was going to be an NBA basketball player out of high school.
yeah,
Um, Two, you add in like, where he's come from, his upbringing, and all that stuff, things that have happened to him. Pepper in like millions and millions of dollars that he has in his bank account.
yeah,
And I'm sure like that's just like, yeah, and his own personal style, like all of that combined meshes into something that, like, I think that's why I think Anta is doing such a good job, which is why I want to get the speed shoe as well and bring that in. Because I just
yeah,
think
Matt.
it's so good storytelling. Like you're like infusing this guy into a shoe, and it's like you feel it.
Yeah,
It's
Matt.
it's all him.
Matt, another pencil alum,
Right.
designed that shoe, and he absolutely killed it. And not only is it one person, but like he's influenced by like Kyrie's dad and his
Mhm.
family, and like bringing all of those stories in. Something you do on your show where you talk about kind of like 100 foot, 10 foot, 1 inch. I don't know if those are the increments you use, but
Yeah.
you have this like large picture view, middle picture view, and then like this kind of almost microscopic view. And what
Right.
can you learn from each read? And I feel like you look at something like the Kai Speed shoe, and you're like, there's so much to know and understand. There's symbolism, there's line work, there's artwork, there's everything has meaning. Um,
Right.
there's no part of that shoe that hasn't been poured over and thought about,
Right.
from a performance standpoint, from a function standpoint, but also from a storytelling standpoint and aesthetic standpoint.
Right.
And something that I think you like truly hit on the head with the Kai One is that, man, there's so much going on this shoe, but it works. All of it melds and meshes
Right.
together, and it works beautifully. And you look at that shoe, and it feels so refined, even though at that microscopic view, you're like, well, over here, there's this, over here, there's that, over here, there's that.
Yep.
Um, so, anyway,
It,
design's awesome, man. Isn't it
yeah.
great?
It's kind of something like I want to get more of the I want to get more Ling Ding and Anta. I want to get those shoes kind of like next to each other, because it's like there's like an aesthetic coming from overseas that like does not exist here, and I don't even know if it like culturally is available. Like I don't know
Yeah.
like that people at Nike, and I don't want to slight them, they're ultra creative people, like, but it's like I don't think you can grow up here, live here, and create what they're creating over there. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it,
Well, and
yeah, like
what's interesting too about it is that like the whole Kai design team, for the most part,
yeah.
at least performance wise, is based in Santa Monica.
Oh,
They're
so I'm
in
eating my words already.
No, you're totally fine. They're in the U.S., but you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So like they work with teams overseas, and something you mentioned in the Kai One video as well is that they have direct contact with their manufacturer. Like they
Yep.
have their own factory.
Yep.
And so the, mold open fees, easy.
Right.
Like putting a molded piece here versus this, it's like, it doesn't matter. The world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's this interesting kind of balance that like they have this manufacturing expertise from overseas, and then also these like dudes, like this team that I've met, they're awesome people. They're
Right.
super talented in Santa Monica, and they, all of them just bleed basketball. Like they
Yeah.
love basketball, and they're bringing that aspect. And also like Kyrie, like
Right.
Matt was telling me, he's like, we all got beach cruisers. Kyrie came down for a meeting. We all got beach cruisers and like rode bikes around the beach with
Sheesh.
Kyrie. And like, that's,
Did
that's
they get
getting to know
mobbed?
your athlete. No,
Like,
that's getting to know your athlete and
Yeah.
understanding your athlete. And like, that's a whole design team that, has a diverse background of perspectives from all over the US and
Right.
all over the country, but also, having the manufacturing base and having, basically their entire mother company in China and understanding that market as well. Basketball's gigantic in
Yeah.
China.
Yeah.
Every street corner in, like mainland, urbanized China is like filled with courts of kids just playing outside.
Yep.
Every day. So
Yeah, it's great. Man, yeah. So it's just super cool, and like it is like kind of it's a bit of a basketball revolution like going on right now.
yeah.
In terms of, man, this could be a whole episode. I need to like
We need to chill.
save some of this content. We can talk about basketball, like, because basketball is kind of going through like this thing where like it feels like the power is in like the Chinese brands right now, like the Chinese HQ, at least the Chinese HQ brands. Like, I mean, their stuff is so compelling, and they just don't seem to stop. Like it just like it's pouring in, and you're like, okay, we get it. Like you guys are killing it. Like what? And it's like with the speed that I don't think we can like keep up with. Which is interesting in itself, because like I wonder if it starts to burn itself out. Time will tell, but right now, like, you watch reviewers. I watch reviewers all the time because I play basketball, and it's clear to me that those are like the A tier shoes in terms of cushioning and grip and upper fit and stuff like that. So crazy, with the exception of the Kobe's, the Protros, man, because those things are going quick. But anyway, so cool.
We could talk about networking now if you want.
Yes. So I think we should transition that. I mean, you've already said it. You've already alluded to it a couple of times. You've met designers. You've met me. Oh, you know what? No, I do want to say this. When we were talking about design language, like in a Kyrie, it made me think of like the difference between the Kyrie and the Brooks shoe, like the Hyperion, because like back to back, like if you look at those side by side, like you can tell like the Brooks shoe is like I love Ryder, awesome designer on that shoe. It's public knowledge, so I feel like I can say that. Like Brooks posted him on their thing. So he's the man. Super talented. I hope I work with him again someday, because I was learning a lot from him. But like I just, there's just not like there's not like an outright story other than like run fast and be lightweight quickly and look fast. Like, and and I mean, that's the assignment, number one. Like that's what you want to do. But like, there's not like in some, I'd say some Brooks shoes have an athlete behind them. At least they should start. Like I think Josh Kerr.
I was gonna say Josh Kerr, or like
so
Des Linden.
They're starting to
now Kara Goucher.
They're like starting to infuse that, but like right now there's not like an athlete shoe. Yeah. So it's really just like performance run, and how do I outdo the next performance run guy? which is why I burnt out over over the span of about 8 years. Because there's only
Yeah.
so many times I feel like you can keep doing that until you want something else. Which is all good, like no hate, no shade. I love my time there. Love the
Right.
workers there. Like it is what it is. But yeah, it's like, you just have that compare and contrast where there's a person, a life story, and then just like a product story that like you're just trying to
Yeah.
appeal to the runner, like
Yeah.
um
Over the general consumer who runs. And I
yeah,
think, Brooks has like their particular kind of niche is like your run, or like run happy.
right,
So
right,
it's even more broad, right? It's like, you do have your offering for like the performance athlete,
right,
and then you do have your offering for like, hey, like your daily trainer, or your, you've got like the people who wear your Brooks Beast,
yep,
and then you have your people who wear like the Ghost, and then now with the Ghost Max, hit it off,
yep,
like, so
yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah,
But
it,
it's like you can also see, like, I don't know if you've seen the Solomon S Lab Spectre.
yes.
um that one's like a marathon racing shoe meant for like slower or like non-elite marathon paces, like
Right,
a pace related shoe.
right,
And like, I think everybody who does like shoe reviews or whatever, as like as runners, like they looked at that kind of messaging and was like, why would I ever want, like,
right,
it's like, marathon racing should be like your Ferrari,
yeah,
or like, let's say your Porsche 911, and then you're like, but also there's the Taycan, like the
yeah,
like the midsize, SUV that looks, it's also a Porsche,
right.
but it's,
There's like um someone said when I was like in high school, because like the Porsche Boxster came out, it was
hmm
like and I had like a gym teacher was driving one, and I was like, oh, that's cool, like a teacher has a Porsche. And like my friend was like, yeah, but that's like the Honda Civic of Porsches. And I'm like, oh man, like that's hard. like
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
he finally ponied up for a Porsche and bought like the Civic. It's like, oof.
That's what
um
they do. That's what they do to you.
yeah, right. Man, this is awesome already. Like it's already given me like so many avenues I want to take this show. Like it's great.
Yeah,
But
just
yeah,
bottle it. You take it all.
yeah, it's like yeah, the whole, yeah, man. Like there's the generalized runner, and I think what's interesting is like we would try to infuse a story into the product, like, and our own
hmm
storytelling as designers there, like, because we're trying to just like, you know, but like largely it's like, um, oh, that's, yeah, it's like how do I just get the most pristine engineered mess that like no one's ever done
Right,
before.
right,
Um,
right,
and I tell you, but like at Brooks, like it is the refiner's fire. Like
right.
engineer meshes, just having been out of Brooks for like 3 or 4 months, like that is the hardest thing to do, like in footwear, I think hands down. Like
Right.
trying to like communicate what you want, and then you don't really know what you understand a little bit what an engineer mesh can do, but you like don't
Right, right.
know because you're not the engineer behind the mesh, and then like you're trying to communicate what
Yeah.
you want, and you get this back and forth, and then you get a shell that looks bad, and then you're like, well, I kind of like this but I don't like that, and then you like push it back and forth, and that's
Right.
not even like lasting, like the
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's just
effort.
flat.
Yeah, like you just get a
Yeah,
flat back, and it's like
it's interesting too, because like, so we ran into this. Obviously, I've worked in design, but I haven't worked in design in footwear. But when we're talking about knits, like I worked at Purple for a while,
yeah.
and we did knitted covers, and it's all circular knit, which is like pretty different to how uppers are made. Uppers are all made on flatbed knitting machines, for the most part. So circular knit like causes all of its own myriad of other problems, like,
Does it come out as a
if you,
tube?
yep, comes out as a tube, and
Oh
then it's
wow.
split on one seam and filleted, right?
Yeah.
And then it's, stinter ovened, cured and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But the problem with that is like, now you have to tweak fiber contents to try to resist like running,
Oh yeah.
because when everything is circular knit, you have, they're called whales,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's basically like in a pantyhose when you get like one loop
Yep.
uncut, all of them start to
Oh
uncut.
yeah.
So something that you can do is like you have to tweak the fibers so that when one cuts, they kind of like lock.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh crap.
but something that was interesting is like at Purple, we worked with a ton of different manufacturers who were making the same fabric for us. But we couldn't like standardize the patterns. We were giving them like bitmaps, or we
Mhm.
were giving them Adobe Illustrator like line work of what the pattern was, and then we had to tell their engineers like, we need you to go into your software and like assign all of the ticks, is what they call them,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
all the different loops. Um, and the thing is, like, from machine to machine or machines next to each other in the factory, they could use completely different software. So if you're not like a knit engineer,
Yep.
you're never going to be able to like sit down and code. Basically, you're coding what patterns and what like dropped stitches and what picked up stitches and what yarns are getting from the back to the surface.
Yep.
Like, unless you become a knit engineer, you're never going to be able to get that granular.
Yeah.
So you can work with a knit engineer, but for the most part, right, you're blocking out zones and you're looking at swatches and you're saying, I like this kind of hole pattern and I want it in this zone.
Yep.
But, and obviously, I don't think we can talk about like projects that you have locked on your portfolio, but you have one where like you totally finessed all of this wonderful like knit structure and design on
Hmm.
one of these uppers that I absolutely love. Um, it was actually like your first pullover for the Hyperion, I
Oh
think.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just loved like how you had the knit ticks like fade over whatever.
Yeah.
And that stuff's super difficult. It's extremely hard to communicate that to a factory, especially with there's like a language barrier, and then
Yeah.
also like they're trying to figure out their own thing. So that communication is key to design. If you can't communicate that idea, it's already going to come out bad. And when you're working on a tight
Right.
timeline, like running every year,
Yep.
you know, you don't get the right pullover, it's game. It's game.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it's like you kind of just have to be a little bit. It's like you got to be a little bullheaded, like because like
Yeah.
um, I think about projects where I did the engineered like mesh design. And it came back looking kind of funky. And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
if I cut and run here and try to start over the next round, because at Brooks there's only 2 rounds. Like you get, that's what you get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the timeline that gets a little tighter and a little tighter and a little tighter. Like there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. So you're like, okay, I've got to like, if I cut and run and we start this thing over, like the risk goes shooting back up. Like, and
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like, kind of back to all of what we've been talking about is, like with the Hyperion, like that mesh is pretty fantastic.
Styled.
But yeah, and I think doing meshes like that and being able to do them well, um, and being able to sketch at a place like Brooks, put like out renders and convince the people we need to convince, like for a running shoe. Like I think it just like, I mean, it's pretty good education. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, like I, it's definitely like like I said, as I've been out, I've been like, holy cow, like I find footwear design outside of Brooks to be a little easier. Like it's not as hard as it used to be for some reason. Which is good. And you know,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
I'm sure
fine.
you're also finding other ways where, you're flexing pre-existing muscles that are pretty strong.
Yeah.
So it feels super easy, but I'm sure you're finding other things where you're like, oh, there's a tendon here I haven't used in a lot of years that
Yeah.
I'm like trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Um, so that's just part of being a human being. That's just part of evolving and like becoming better, right? Is like you
Yeah.
feel like you're real strong in this one area, and then you're like, oh, I'm super weak in this other one. I gotta hit the gym on this.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the difference, like at least right now that I'm noticing between Brooks and Rad is like there's like it's like blending performance with like um I would say like what the special makeup team does at Brooks. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
doing both at the same time, and which I think is super cool, and it's its own challenge. And at the same time is like how do you, which I think is something I always wanted to do, and it leans to my strengths, which is why I picked it.
Yeah.
It just worked. It just
Yeah. I think
I was like, this is my place. These are my people.
for sure. Yeah. Rad is sitting in like a very interesting space right now. Like, I mean, to take the thing we talked about further, it's like, yeah, running doesn't have like a signature athlete to kind of like anchor a story behind. And it has like a strong community presence, but it's not. It's like a generalized community presence in a way.
Yep.
Whereas Rad like sits in this zone where it's like this new athlete that's like, you know, they're focused on strength training. They're focused on, you know, looking good and feeling good. You know, they're the dudes wearing like the Youngla, you know,
Yeah.
athletic wear. They're the dudes wearing the Gym Shark or whatever. The gals wearing the Gym Shark.
Yep.
You know, they're that athlete that like looks good, feels good, but is really trying to push themselves to be better.
Yep.
And that's like a particular group of people that's like relatively small but growing rapidly.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and so that's like a very, yes, it's like running in the aspect that there's like not a specific athlete for you to anchor or story to anchor towards, but you have this new young group that is just now growing. Like
Yep.
it's almost like it's 1972 and jogging just became a craze.
Right. Right.
Like it's almost exactly like that. It's lightning in a bottle in a way.
Right. It's nice also to not have the baggage of years and years and years of
Like
company
preconceived
history.
notions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I
Yeah.
can. It's its own set of challenges, but then it's kind of a strength as well. It's a superpower.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of that. Let's talk about the reason you're here.
Yeah.
The networking side of footwear is pretty interesting. I'll be doing a bio episode in probably by the end of the week. I'll figure it out. Basically taking through like my journey, and then I'm going to try to grab other people's journeys into footwear, how they broke through. And then basically like in a nutshell, mine was like the stories of no, 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 no. This is not what you should not be doing. This, don't do this, to the point where my father-in-law would ask me like, well, so how long are you going to do this footwear thing? Like, because he wants me to take care of his daughter. You know, like what are you going to do?
Oh yeah.
Like,
100%.
and so I was like, okay, got it. But I was just really, you know. And it's not footwear is not like, I was just talking about this the other day. Footwear is not like being like an accountant, you know. It's not like you know, any other job where you're going in with a white collar on, and you know, it's not there's not like, you know, knowing a guy who knows a guy. There's like 20 people in the industry, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like you really got to be doing something to get in. And so really how I got in was starting Instagram, and that kind of just like, if it was like a feeling I had, I was like, okay, Instagram's growing, should probably put some stuff on. And then hopefully, I hate doing portfolios, this could be my portfolio, and then I can use that to get a job maybe. And that was kind of, it was dumb in some rights, because like when Nike kind of reached out, they were like, well, do you have like a PDF portfolio? And I was like, I got my Instagram. And they were like, we can't have you stand up in front of like execs and like scroll through your like, it's like, all right,
Your
take out
IG.
your phone, everybody, let's scroll to like May 20th, and let's look at this one.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, but yeah, so that's what led me to Pencil, which was like the ultimate networking opportunity for me. And I think it was just like kind of that last little like chip into the dam before the floodgates broke. But it was not without like a ton of effort on my end. Like I don't want to undersell
Oh yeah.
that, and I'll talk about that on the thing. But I really like what you've done, and something that I learned when I was trying to get my next second job was that I needed to kind of branch out and talk to more people. And it's kind of a you know a couple different reasons for doing that, threefold, fourfold, whatever. But one was that I was terrible at interviewing, and I only knew that after talking to like the first couple people and saying some stuff that I probably shouldn't have said.
Right.
Like, like, like really saying some things. I was like, oh man, like looking back, like, oh shoot, like I hope I didn't like burn a bridge. I'd probably not. People don't
Right.
remember anything, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you never know. But anyway, so and then my friend who is at Boeing, kind of a mentor of mine, at least in the career side, was telling me about informational interviews and talking
Yeah.
to people, and how to set those up. And so I just kind of started blasting like emails to people who I just wanted to talk to, which is a little bit of the inspiration for this podcast. But just talking to random people was pretty cool. And,
Yeah.
starting to get at least a little bit like outside of the bubble that I feel like I'd put myself in at Brooks, and try to like, kind of pop out and be like, what else is going on? Like, what is everyone doing? And,
Right.
anyway, like, and some of that was inspired by like a manager who was just like, hey, uh, you might think you might be able to have it good somewhere else, but everyone's doing the same thing we're doing, kind of a thing. He's like, just ask your friends. And I was like, well, I don't have any friends in the industry. So like, I'm going
Right.
to go
Right.
get some and I'm going to ask them, how it is. And so,
Right.
that happened. And then, yeah. And then before I know it, I have a message from Colin Tanner. and, and the rest is history. But yeah, just I would love to hear your philosophy on, you know, what you do, why you do it, and yeah, like where you're at now, like when you talk to people. I know that's a
For
lot of
sure.
things to kind of go through in your mind, but maybe just talk about like what inspires you to talk to people as
Yeah.
often
For
as you
sure.
do.
Yeah. My my biggest thing. I love talking about this, by the way, because I do have a very particular viewpoint on networking.
Right.
In fact, I actually like, in a way, I kind of hate the word networking because it feels a little dirty. Like it feels like, oh, I'm networking because I'm trying to like get an in. I'm trying to
Right.
whatever. I'm trying to utilize this relationship. I really much rather like to think about it as, I really like making friends who do really cool stuff. And like, I just, I find it interesting hearing and understanding people's stories, how they got somewhere, what they did to do that, and trying to model my life in a way that like someone may think I'm really cool and wants to reach out and hear and be a friend with somebody who they think is really cool. That would be awesome, right?
Right.
Um, I um, I wrote this article once for I graduated in communication, so I wrote a whole magazine about footwear,
That's
and
wow.
like streetwear, and that was my basically like graduation project. Was I built this whole website talking about footwear and streetwear, and what I thought about it. And one of my last articles was called "Always Support the Homies." Um, and in there, I talk about how I love to see other people succeed, and I love to see other people just killing it. And I always feel like if there's anything I can do, if there's someone I can put you in contact with, if there's an email, if there's something that I have, if I have the keys to the kingdom, I want to give them to you
Right.
because I want nothing more than in the world than for everyone to succeed and have the life, the career that they want. I've always really loved LinkedIn because I always tell people like, what other social media allows you to build people up and tell other people how great they are at their job or what they do or what they believe in. Like what other place can I write you a recommendation and say, I think this dude's great and his work is awesome. You know,
Right.
like there's no other website like that. you
Right.
know, um, and so what I like to do is I like to understand that everybody has a unique story and a unique journey, um, and people like to be heard, and people like to share their wisdom and their knowledge.
Right.
Um, so when I reached out to you, obviously I always like to find like a mutual connection or like a reason why I'm reaching out, because otherwise it feels weird.
Mm.
And obviously, like, I had a coworker at the time that like you were really close with and you went to school with,
Right.
and I was trying to get into footwear or learn more about footwear, and I just saw that you had like an awesome journey. So I reached out and I just said, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, you're in footwear? That's awesome. I want to talk to you."
Yeah.
And then we became what I would say is pretty close friends. Like,
Yeah.
we text on an almost daily basis.
Yeah.
And we've only met one time in person, but
Yeah.
like, I consider you a good friend.
But like,
And
and a couple times virtual in the metaverse.
yep, exactly. Yep. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's another thing too. So like I said, if there's ever anything I can impart or give, or share, then I want to. So like, you had shared with me that you wanted to design for New Balance. You were applying to this
Oh,
role,
that's right.
and at the time I was at Pencil for the New Balance program, and I remember I talked to Jared Goldman, who was actually going to be like your hiring manager essentially, and he
Yeah.
kind of said, "I'm not considering anybody who doesn't have 3D experience in Gravity Sketch." And I heard it in my head, and I said, "Jake wants to do this role,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have experience in Gravity Sketch." And I had a VR headset before I went to this program, but they provided us one at Pencil so that we could learn this great software.
Right.
And I decided, hey, Jake needs this. I don't need it. I don't need a second one.
Yeah.
So we got on in the metaverse, and you
Man.
learned how to use Gravity Sketch. You were so fast at it because you had already known Blender, and like, sub D surfacing is all the same everywhere.
Right.
But that was something like I loved doing, like, helping somebody in some aspect. I think helping people is something I love. It's part of the reason why I want to be in footwear, is
Right.
because when I was in retail, I was always the top salesman, but it wasn't because like I was a good schmoozer or whatever. It was because I knew everything about these shoes and about why they fit a specific need for a specific person. And I would tell them, and they'd
Right.
be like, that makes total sense. Like, that's exactly what I need. And I wanted to take it a step further, and I said, instead of just telling people about why these designers made it this way, I want to be that person. I want to look at the problems that people have and empathize with them, and get in the mix with them and understand them, and provide the solution, design the
Right.
solution for them. And that's why I love design, and that's why I love people. I think sometimes it's difficult. Not everybody is a people person, but I think everyone can be a people appreciator. I think no matter where you are in your life, you're always going to have to interact with people. Um,
Right. Yeah.
that's
Yep.
that's society. That's the world. And the more positive, like positivity and love and kindness you can put in the world, the better.
Yep.
So that's my outlook on networking. Just make friends who do cool stuff, and understand that everyone has a unique journey, and you can learn from people's journeys, and you can learn from their understanding where they came from. A lot of people, if you just ask, they want to help.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. That's kind of been uh my experience, like ever since you reached out, and then ever since trying to like move jobs. Once I didn't realize how difficult that would be, because I think my first job kind of came somewhat easily. So I was like, oh, well then maybe the second one should come easily, but that was like anything but the truth. And so going through that experience, it was like, all right, well, if anyone comes knocking on my door, I'm going to help them. Um, Given that this podcast might take off, I don't know if I would be able to help everybody. Um, but I try really hard to at least like like send messages back, and for the most part, I have met with pretty much everybody who's reached out, that like looks legit. I'd say that's part of like the whole networking thing is like start with your image, like what you're casting out into the world. I definitely saw your profile when you reached out, and I was like, oh, this guy looks like a normal dude, like and same with like some of the other people who've reached out. There have been a couple times where like people have reached out and I'm like, I don't know if you're a bot or if you're like an actual person.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to find out. And so I think that kind of goes a long way to kind of move. And then something else you talked about, I think what works for you, and I'm not sure how to like rub this off to every other people, is you have this natural love like for footwear, um,
Yeah.
and it kind of comes off authentic to anyone you speak to in the industry, which I think is why it like, and you just like you said, like you don't want to just know footwear, you want to know like everything about it, and you were talking to one of our developers at the material show, and it just kind of blew
Yeah.
my mind that like you even knew what like airbag manufacturing was, and I was like, man, is there like no end to like the depth of like where this guy's gone to like to be an expert in this thing? But what happened? But it's an awesome thing for me to see because I don't know if I have that passion and I'm in this world. Um, but I think it just like it goes such a long ways to like where I feel like you like infiltrated like a Nike event and like you're like rubbing shoulders with like Nike people, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like Colin sending me pictures of him with Tinker, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, how is this happening? And it's like, but really, it's like it's a superpower. Like, it's a power that like I think anything that you do, design or otherwise, like if you're not a designer and you're listening to us for whatever reason, or um, you know, if you just like get in love with your field
Yeah.
and again do kind of exercise what Colin's saying here, like you want to meet people who do cool things. I don't know if this applies to dentistry, but like if you like are really geeking out about something and you know someone who's doing the thing that you want to do and you just geek out and talk to them, you never know what can come from that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm also reading a book right now that's like really I'm just trying to like find ways to increase my own income or whatever,
Yeah.
but it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be income, it can be whatever. But literally like the whole advice of the book so far, and I'm like halfway through, is like you just got to do like you just have to take crazy chances like all the time, and you
Yeah.
just have to be
Yeah.
comfortable just taking them and taking them
Yeah.
again, and if it fails you take another one. Like,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. 100%.
yeah, you just kind of go for it. But I just think that combining that with like a passion for the thing you want to do, I think it just connects like instantly because we're all kind of shoe nerds who are
Yeah.
doing shoe things. And
Yeah.
so, like I said, you're the most well known non footwear, like professionally hired footwear designer. And but I don't think that's going to last very long. What,
Yeah.
very long could be in essence, it could be years or whatever it is, or whatever the case,
Right.
you've got your things, but, it's just like to me, like when you are doing what you're doing, it only makes sense that like the right thing's going to find you if you
Yeah.
just keep
100%.
making the friends and making that effort. And so anyway, so I hope people have found whatever I just said interesting, but I've definitely found what you said. Like already I'm like taking notes on how I can improve, my own,
Of
uh,
course.
not networking, I guess, just building friends, building the circle.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned like, oh, like I infiltrated some Nike experience and I got to meet Tinker Hatfield. Like that's all because because of Ian Williams at Dead Stock Coffee, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh, and he knew that I was out in Portland from the material show, and there was this group of Instagram footwear collectors and lots of big wigs and important people, and it was all happening at Ian's new Dead Stock Coffee location. And I became close friends with Ian over the last couple of years. Um, do some graphic design work for him every once in a while, just message him back and forth. He was someone that I reached out to early on in my career because, his story is fascinating. I don't know if you know his story. And again, this is a thing, like, I love people and I love
Yeah.
stories and I love understanding people's journeys. But Ian was a custodian at Nike headquarter campus.
Ah.
And he, knew all the dudes who worked in Nike SB and became friends with them, and to the point where they allowed him to design his own Nike Dunk. This is
Right.
at the height of Nike SB Dunks, and he designed the wet floor sign dunk. And he parlayed that opportunity into becoming a footwear developer for Nike, and he worked full time as a footwear developer for Nike for 6 years.
Yeah.
And that journey and that story is like so inspirational.
Right.
And I, when I was a high schooler slash first year college student working at Vans, hearing that story and being like, wow, like you could do something like that is amazing. And
Right.
then he decided he didn't want to be in the footwear industry like that. He enjoyed the community more, so he started Dead Stock Coffee
Right.
and then built his community. And I have the fortunate reality that my my lovely wife, her family lives in Oregon, so we're here all the time. And
Right.
so while we were here, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go to Portland. I'm gonna go meet Ian Williams. I'm gonna tell him how inspiring his story is. And this was years ago. This is like 2017. I go and talk to Ian Williams at Dead Stock Coffee, and I say, hey, Ian, I'm a huge fan. Your story is so inspirational, and I want to be a footwear developer. At the time, I wanted to be a footwear
Right.
developer. And he was like, that's good. We always need more developers.
That is the
And then from
truth.
there, we just became friends. Like,
Man. Yeah, just
but yeah, all of those years then trickled down to being at the material show.
right.
And then Ian being like, hey, come through. There's some people who are going to be here. You should meet.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, like, if you can throw a party and those guys show up, you're doing all right. Like,
Yeah, what's so funny about it is I was like dapping up Ian and telling him, I was like, hey man, I got to head out. I got to go home and get some rest. I got an early flight tomorrow morning.
mm,
And as soon as I like gave him a hug and told him I was about to leave, Tinker Hatfield walked through the doors with Aaron Cooper, and he looked at me. He's like, I don't think you're leaving.
yeah,
And I stayed for like another 30 minutes so that I could like say my piece to Tinker Hatfield and talk to him. And
yeah,
so,
that's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You just keep just put yourself out there. Just when you were saying that, I was like, I just felt cringy. I was like, oh, I guess I can thumbs up. Did you see that on your end? No.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well,
It's like a thing. You can do 2 thumbs up, and I think it does confetti or something. Maybe it doesn't do it anymore. Maybe it's that.
well,
Anyway.
yeah. I was just gonna say, as you were saying, like you went to go meet him at Deadstock. I'm like, the level of like my heart. Like, I think I just had too many experiences where I'm like, oh, I fanboyed that guy and felt stupid. Like, I just feel like, oh, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could like drive over there and just like start talking to this guy. Like, man, the awkward like nerves. Like, even just hearing
I
it
get
was
it.
like,
I get it. I feel that too, but I think something that I tell myself is everybody's just a human being, and everybody's worked hard to get where they are.
yeah,
Hopefully, and like I said, people like to be listened to and hopefully feel like, I would say for the most part, most people like to feel like they're helping someone.
right,
And so I think if you can get in there and make a genuine connection, that's something I want to kind of talk about too. Is you can't, again, it goes into me saying I don't like the word networking because it feels dirty. It's like you can't go into this forming this relationship being like, I'm gonna get something out of it. This guy's got to get me a job, or this guy's got to whatever, this gal's got to give me this or give me a recommendation. It's got to be like, nah, this person does something really cool and they've got a cool story, and I need to hear it, I need to understand it, and I need to learn from it.
Right.
And that's why I think it's just about making friends and growing the community. I think for the most part, I've had stellar experiences with everybody in the footwear industry because it is so small. You can't make enemies and move very far.
Right.
Like, if you do, you're not in this
Yep.
for very long. Um, and so, yeah, I think also understanding and having like a historical knowledge of people who are important is also a big deal. Like, I had the opportunity to learn, footwear design and innovation from Mike Freeton, which I don't know if you know who Mike is, but
Yep.
Mike is
Mike.
an absolute legend in Nike circles. He was like Bill Bowerman's right hand man, making stuff
Yep.
and doing stuff with Bill Bowerman. And this guy is, you would never know that he's such a genius. He's just in the corner doing his thing.
Yep.
But, when I was taking his class, no one else in the class knew who he was. It was just me. And I loved talking to him because you could see I knew things about his history, what he worked on, that, it influenced how much we got out of the class. Because I was like,
Right.
hey, Mike, could you tell us about when you worked on the Presto? Oh, yeah, I worked with Toby on the Presto and I did this and I did that. Wow. He wouldn't have said that otherwise.
Right.
Or
Right.
like, hey, you worked with Mike Avaney on the Nike Woven. Like, could you tell me about that? Actually, at that same party where Tinker Hatfield showed up later, Mike Freeton was there,
Oh
and he was just
man.
kind of wallflowering, hanging out. And since I had taken his class, and we actually had a really good conversation at the material show earlier in the day, he was just kind of like there, and he was like about to say like an Irish goodbye, like I think he was just gonna leave.
Right.
But I kind of like cornered him, and I was like, Mike, how you been? Like, what are you doing? And we talked. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go on a hike to Mount Hood, this weekend. So I gotta head out. I gotta head out soon because I gotta get my gear ready. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like what kind of backpacking gear do you have? What hiking shoes are you gonna wear? Oh, you like the Topo? Yeah, because of the wide toe box.
Yeah.
So we're like talking about all this stuff, and that's where it is. Like, you have to be genuine about it. I was genuinely interested in what Mike Freeton was doing this weekend.
Yeah.
Not that he was this, he is this legend, but like, he is a human being. He has a story. He has things he has to do throughout the day. He has things that he's looking forward to. We're all human beings. We're all interacting in the same world. So
Right.
be in the world with someone else at the same time is great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm impressed. Just yeah, just yeah, of course you know Mike. Of course, why wouldn't you know Mike? Of course you've taken his class. Of course you've done EBJ's class. You've done all
Yeah, I
that.
did EBJ's class. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I ran Hood to Coast relay race 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and I saw EBJ at the one of the finish lines. I got to be like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
meeting in person for the first time during Hood to Coast. That was fun.
And then you're not yeah, then it's like then you introduce me to her and it's like you just pay it forward and it's yeah. I think
Yeah, I
it's
mean, you
yeah.
had mentioned, like, we're gonna talk about this because I think it's important too, right? I'm just this kid reaching out to Jake, trying to learn his journey, his story, and like understand, how he does design, how he looks at design, and how I can learn from it. And he mentioned, maybe trying to get into kids footwear. And I said, oh, I took a class from Elizabeth Brock Jones, and I know that she's like in charge of like kids innovation now. And I was like, hey, do you know EBJ? And he's like, no, I know of her. And I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I got her email. I'll set you up right now.
Yep.
And that's what it's about, man. Like, we're just building the
It's
world. We're building the community.
invaluable. Well, yeah, you might get emails off of this podcast and people saying, "Hey, you said you set up Jake. Let's get it going here."
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, anybody who wants to reach out, and if I can put you in contact with somebody, if I can do whatever it is, I'll do it
Yeah.
because I want nothing more than to ride your wave and see you succeed.
Right. Man, I can't say that about everybody. It's like it's not something that is like it's just not found in every like footwear designer, everyone in the footwear world. Sometimes I feel like it gets a little cutthroat. A lot of people are friendly. It's, you know, it's just a normal place, but I feel like sometimes in some circles, like depending on what job you're trying to get to, it can get a little crazy.
Yeah.
But it's just a breath of fresh air, and I think that's it's good for all of us, you know, like to just to help each other out more than to um yeah, to be a block in this like whole circle of footwear friends.
Yeah. Why, like,
Yeah,
why would I gatekeep? You know, if it's
yeah,
something I truly love and I'm truly passionate about, like, why would I gatekeep it? Why
yeah,
would I, you know, if I want to see the footwear design world, you know, get big, and I want to see designers get paid for what they do, and I want to see designers like given the torch and the ability and the respect and the understanding that they deserve. Why would I do anything to get in the
right,
way of that? You know, I told someone this once. You know, growing up, you know, people look up to athletes and to actors, and they say like, I want to be like them, I want to be this. I did that with designers. I did that
right.
with footwear designers.
Mm,
You know, I thought, you know, hey, I want to be like Wilson Smith. Like, Wilson Smith has a pure heart of solid gold.
right,
um like, if there's one man in footwear that builds other people up and is so positive, it's Wilson Smith. um, and you know, that's something I aspire to be like. You know, I think
right,
of, you know, I had the fortunate reality of learning from E. Scott Morris. E. Scott Morris has, you know, has a giant heart, amazing person, amazing storyteller,
right.
um, and you know, those are the people that build the community and they build this world, in a positive way. Um, so if I can continue to do that,
Yeah,
I'm, even if I never became a footwear designer ever, as long as I am helping people, I'm good.
yeah. I mean, you're. It's almost like you're almost becoming the conduit. It's like you like someone's gonna, like you said, carry the torch. Like those guys, I wouldn't say they're on their way out. I mean, you know, Aaron Cooper just had a shoe come out, you know, so it's like
Yeah.
they can still do it. They can still hang, you know, but like you get this feeling that like there's a torch being passed, and I'm like, who's gonna pick it up, you know, and
Right.
who's gonna carry it on this like industry that we love and care about so much. Well, that's a whole nother story for another time.
Excellent.
We are
Yep.
like
100%.
straight up at an hour. Um, this now becomes the longest episode. I'm not even going to filter this. I'm just going to like put it out there for people.
Sweet.
Let it,
I'm getting the wrap up from my wife.
yeah,
So.
let it fly. Um, you know, next time we'll get you in a place where there's not doilies behind. Like,
Yeah, I'm at the in-law grandparent beach house right now. So
nice, nice.
got this
It's
sweet
like
little pelican over here.
roses and whatever else.
I've got a way cooler office, I promise.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back on. We'll talk more footwear. Well, thanks everybody. If whoever watches, thanks for joining us. It is not wasted on me that people watch this stuff. Um, and I just want to keep putting it out. There's so much cool stuff that happens in footwear. Again, I want to be like your guide into the professional world of footwear. A lot of people just like to geek out about shoes. I want to be someone who's on the inside, and we can talk about it in like this super awesome professional way, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. That's it. With that said, like I feel like everyone should go and try to network or think about how they can do things a little bit better. I'm certainly going to do that as well. Anyway, Caulin, appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me on. I'm stoked to be on. Thank you.
You will be back. Um, because you agreed, we're probably going to keep you going. This is a little more interesting than me just talking to my camera. Anyway, thanks. Come back for the next episode. It'll be soon. My bio, I don't know if I'm going to put that out first or this, but figured out. All right, tech packs are due. See you next time. Ciao.
Packs are due.